You're listening to a 3CR podcast created in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Palestine Remembered. Day 329 of this genocide, and the disaster continues. For those of us that have been involved in this space forever, we were very clear that this was not a war on Hamas, but a war on Palestinians, a settler colonial entity that wants to dispossess indigenous people of their lands. And we've seen the opening of the Eastern Front now. What's been happening in East Palestine, or the West Bank, has been happening for every bit of every day since 1967. But the escalation there, they are using now normal tactics. What has become normalized in Gaza, what the world has come to accept in Gaza, the turning off of power, the destruction of civil infrastructure, the quote-unquote evacuation of cities, the evacuation of hospitals. This is now the norm. And it's unfolding in the West Bank. And it's all part of Israel's continuation, where they want all of the land, all of Palestine, with as little Palestinians as possible. That's what settler colonialism is, replacing indigenous people with a brutal colonial power. As it was in this continent, on this land, where the indigenous people, less than 240 years ago, were 100% of the population. The same effort by this last colonial project, the Zionist, imperialist, genocidal project to ethnically cleanse all of Palestine. In the West Bank, during the week, we've seen over 20 dead, the destruction of roads, water services, hospitals. It beggars belief that the world is going to stand by and allow this to happen. During the week, we've seen a number of things happen. A couple of indigenous suicides in custody. We've seen the Northern Territory government be elected on a mandate of criminalising and imprisoning 10-year-olds, where 100% of those are indigenous. A week and a bit ago, it was the 23rd of August, we had a rally with our Tamil brothers and sisters and our refugee brothers and sisters in front of DFAT in Burke Street in the city on Friday night. We spoke about the inhumanity, the absolute barbarity of our government's immigration policy, and how they are inhumanely treating people who have fled war, famine, being hunted just merely for their identity and who they are, how many of them have been waiting 10 and 15 years for permanent protection visas, living lives that have no certainty. I want to talk a little bit in a moment about an incident that happened during the week. I know many of you will know, but before that, I'd like to introduce you to a dear brother, Aran Mylvaganam, who is a Tamil brother. He's a 3CR producer and star from Tamil Manifest, although it hasn't been on for a while. Aran, you were at that protest. Let's talk a little bit about, to our listeners who might not understand exactly who the Tamils are. So welcome, and tell us who the Tamils are.
Well, thank you for having me, Nasser, on your program. I want to first start by sharing my pain seeing Palestinians getting killed every day at the hands of the Israeli state, sponsored by countries like Australia. This very studio is where I was back in 2009 when similar thing happened to Tamils. For Tamils, it's actually very painful to see Palestinians being killed in this manner, the whole world was watching, aiding the Sri Lankan state when Tamils were killed in 2009. It's a lot worse now. More Palestinians are getting killed, despite so much media coverage and so many people rallying all around the world. The whole world is somehow able to support the Israeli state to mass murder Palestinians. It's so wrong, and it's so painful to watch. So solidarity with all the Palestinian brothers and sisters who are listening to the show today. We stand with you. We will continue to rally with you. We will one day achieve peace. We will one day reclaim the land. We just need to keep on fighting till then. Tamils are an indigenous population to the north and east of Sri Lanka. There are Tamil speakers in India as well, but when it comes to Tamils in Sri Lanka, we're indigenous to the north and east of that island, and our land is called Tamilulam. In the early 1800s, British invaded Sri Lanka. They united all the Tamil and Sinhala kingdoms, and they left the island in 1948. They left the island in a way that allowed the majority population to attack the minorities, and nobody could do anything about it. Since 1948, there has been so many attacks on the Tamil population using so many different discriminatory laws. The Sinhala Only Act, which meant that those who could only speak the majority language, Sinhala, could get into government jobs. There was a pogrom in the 70s and 80s that killed thousands of Tamils. I was born in 1983. I was born into war. By early 80s, Tamils had resorted to armed resistance. They formed a group called Tamil Tigers. They resorted to armed resistance, and we had a war with the Sri Lankan state, and I was born into that war. Indian state was providing all sorts of support to the Sri Lankan state as well in order to wipe out the Tamil resistance, as well as over time Western powers found its way into supporting the Sri Lankan state as well. So in 1995, my school was bombed by the Sri Lankan state. I witnessed my own brother being chopped in half. I had 3 of my cousins die on that day. 1 we picked up in pieces. Straight after that, for 2 years, I was basically on the run, moving one place to another. Over 500,000 Tamils from this one particular part of the Tamil homeland called Jaffna were uprooted, and we all went to this jungle area. We lived there for 2 years, and then I came to Australia as a refugee at the age of 13 alone. I was put through detention by the Howard government. It was at a time when they were starting to mistreat refugees, introduced temporary protection visas, and brought in offshore detention centres, all sorts of the Tampa children overboard, and so many things happened. And so I became someone who survived a genocide, someone who experienced detention in Australia. All of a sudden, with what the Howard government was doing to the refugees, I became politicized in the sense that I wanted to become an activist. I wanted to do something about what they were doing to my own people, as well as others who were fleeing wars and genocide from other parts of the world. And so I became a refugee activist. I became a presenter on 3CR, and since then I haven't returned anywhere. I've been doing activism.
It's a credit to you, my friend. And, I say to rallies, I say to people who come to the movement that the people you meet within the movement are better people. People who are fighting the fight for humanity are better people. It is much easier to not think about anybody else. It's much easier to get sucked into materialism and capitalism and individualism. But that life is unfulfilling. It is empty. Brother, we had that rally on the 23rd. I personally called out all sides of the government. I mean, this is the Labor government now. It was Kevin Rudd that created offshore detention Manus and Nauru. And here we are, we're talking, and I spoke particularly about the challenges refugees are facing. In particular, your Tamil brothers and sisters who have spent, 10 to 15 years without any certainty. Depressingly and just, so painfully. I mean, Mano was there on the 23rd. He came as a 12-year-old, spent more than 4,000 days without any certainty, newly married, a 1-year-old daughter, in the ultimate political expression, the most ultimate political expression, as we saw with Aaron Bushnell earlier this year, and famously with a Vietnamese cleric in the 60s, Thich Quang Duc, self-immolated. The pain of uncertainty, the pain of the state's oppression and genocide of a people made him kill himself. You knew Mano?
Mano, like you said, he was there on the 23rd, but he spent most of the days at the encampment. From the moment I met him, I could see a really good activist in him. He was there with his friend, Prasad, really close friend. And then all of a sudden, there were 40 or 50 people he brought along to the encampment, and whole family was there. He was taking on different roles. One of the things that he did last time I saw him was staying awake all night on Sunday, trying to make sure that everybody was safe, protecting everybody. The camp has been under attack from racists. Far-right TikTok influencers have been making videos blaming these refugees for the housing crisis and other social issues Australians face. These are 9,000 refugees, by the way, who came to this country 12 years ago. They were blaming them, and as a result, we've seen young white boys turn up to the rally. They would attack, like they attacked me. I actually had dislocated arm after coming under attack from two of these young white boys, and there were two elderly women who were hospitalized. One still hasn't returned, has injured arm. Another was taken by ambulance, and we've had young boys would come and steal our megaphones, and the camp has been under attack, and Mano was well aware of that. And so he wanted to make sure everybody was safe. He wanted to make sure that our camp was fully protected, all the things at the camp. And so, he was a very kind-hearted, community-minded, young activist, promising activist, and it's really heartbreaking. It's more heartbreaking to see such a person being, sacrificing their life for the cause. Obviously he had mental health issues, and, I'm not going to claim any act like this as heroic, but it is not just, mentally unwell people don't just go and self-immolate.
No, it's a system of the oppression.
It is in some ways a political act. Mano wanted to express it this way.
Every form of discrimination that exists in our community is magnified and utilised by prisons to cause greater division and disarm solidarity.
We've got to really put a lens of perspective on this and know that there are children being incarcerated as young as 10 years old.
Police and prisons, they're doing exactly what this colony wants them to.
Who do we defend? Police. And who else? Prisons! Pull them down! Yay.
3CR, stay tuned, stay radical.
Stay locked to 3CR.
This expression is an Indigenous death in custody. This expression is how the police takes Auntie Tanya off a train and, criminalises her, even and ultimately, she dies in a prison cell alone. It is every level and every layer of how the state interacts with quote-unquote others. And the space it's created with this intersection, and we didn't say it before, the Sri Lankan army is armed by one of Palestine's dearest friends, the Israelis. The intersection there, as well as everywhere else in this, capitalist, hegemonic, Western imperial sense.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing. You know how I said my school was bombed by the Sri Lankan army? Mm-hmm. In fact, the plane that Sri Lankan army used was Kefir, built by Israel. Yeah. And the sad part about Kefir is that you can never prepare for it. It comes so fast, it drops the bomb, and it leaves, and you hear the sound after people are
Afterwards.
dead. That's my experience with Israeli state arming the Sri Lankan state. But coming back to Mano, this guy came to this country when he was 12. Like the thousands of other asylum seekers, he was denied a life. He was
Certainty.
denied an opportunity to rebuild his life, right? At the age of 12, you're put on bridging visa, you're denied Medicare, access to Medicare, you're denied the right to go to university, you're denied the right to work. What do you expect a 12-year-old to do?
4,500 days later, surely by some point, in an act of humanity, when your neighbour's house is on fire, you give them some clothes.
That's right.
The state has a responsibility. Most recently, what's been hanging over his head and all the refugees is forced repatriation.
And a lot of people out there would say, give Labour a chance to, make things right for refugees, But one thing that people need to realize, that all these refugees came when Rudd was in power, when Julia Gillard was in power. They deported so many refugees without even assessing their claims, and those who made it into the country, they deliberately delayed processing their asylum applications. And they handed, this guy was kept in detention for 12 months by Labour government as a 12-year-old. And then he was released into the community. They didn't process their asylum applications. They handed them over to the coalition government. And then the coalition government put them through a new process, denied them protection visas. And then Labour comes into power 2 years ago. Since returning to power, they have abolished the process these guys were put through by the coalition government. But for the past 48 days, when we've been protesting outside the Department of Home Affairs, the response from the Labour politicians is that we expect these people to go through the legal system, and once they exhaust the legal system, we expect them to voluntarily depart. Basically threatening to deport these people if they found, if they fail the legal options. The problem with Australia's legal system is that it can never challenge the Immigration Department's assessment of the country situation. So Australia has never acknowledged the genocide against the Tamil people. Australia doesn't recognize the military occupation in the north and east. It claims that Sri Lanka is a safe place for Tamils. It has installed security cameras at Sri Lankan airports to stop Tamils from fleeing. And Sinhalese people as well. There are some Sinhalese people who fled the state violence and came to this country, like political activists, They're on the same boat as well. And Australia has given naval ships to the Sri Lankan army, and now it doesn't recognize the country situation for Tamils and Sinhala activists, and you can't challenge that in the courts. What you can challenge is the process that they have gone through. If they made a mistake in the process, then you might have an opportunity to have your case heard again. So the system is designed to fail the asylum seekers, and our courts are not capable of dealing with the injustice committed by the state.
It's designed to oppress. We're joined, listeners, by Aran Mylvaganam, who's a Tamil activist and just a ripping bloke. We've got land forces coming up in a week and a bit, and the connection between profiteering. I mean, this is the thing. People go, it's good for the economy to have these conferences. It's good for the economy. What they don't realise is the profiteering from machinations of death. If you're okay with somebody making money out of killing, you're going to be next. Yeah? And from that level, the ultimate manifestation of capitalism is seeing each one of us as expedient or unnecessary when our use-by date has been completed. Yeah, and whoever needs to be killed must be killed in the advancement of productivity and profit for shareholders. When we see it at that level, and we see it how they treat our Indigenous brothers and sisters here, and we see what's happening to refugees, it's just so shocking. What have you experienced? Do you have residency?
I'm a citizen, and I have turned my negative experiences with the system to something positive, and for me, that is resistance. Yeah. That's what has kept me going. I could have ended up being another Mano if I hadn't become a fighter, because the only thing that you can do is fight back, and I have used that well. I've been fighting not just against the mistreatment of refugees. I've been coming to every Sunday rally in support of Palestinians, and I've been fighting against the exploitation of working people in this country. For me, everything is interconnected. Every fight against the state needs to be supported, encouraged, and we got to come together and take down the system. Like you said, all these people, who are oppressing refugees, indigenous people, and denying fair conditions for working people. They're also profiting from the genocide that's happening in other parts of the world, right? Through selling weapons and all that. So the only thing that we can do is fight back, keep on fighting. At some point, many people will join us, and eventually we will be able to take down the system. It might seem like, we're just fighting with few people at this point, but at some point, everybody will join us, and together we can bring down the system. And that's to me, that's the real justice to my brother who was murdered by Israeli-built Kfir. That's a real justice to Mano, who took his life because of the way Australia treats refugees. And that's real justice to Palestinians who are facing a genocide. We got to keep on fighting and take on the system.
Listeners, if this conversation has raised any concerns for you, make sure you reach out to Lifeline or to any other support service or to loved ones and friends. As we wrap up the show, that connection that you made, the intersectionality, the connectedness of all of our struggles, Aran, whether it's a fight for Indigenous rights, a fight against racism, a fight against homophobia and queerphobia, against anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, against settler colonialism and all of those hates. The reality, and it's so great to have you on the show, and it's for people who perhaps are listening to the show are wanting to learn about Palestine to know the fight for Palestine is a fight for Tamil justice, for self-determination in your ancestral homelands, the fight for refugees here. The divisiveness that is Peter Dutton's electoral kicking the brown guy while he can, that we should be refuting that at every opportunity.
That's right. We've got an election coming up around the corner, and you can already see that Liberals are gearing up for blaming migrants for all the cost of living crisis. So, we've got to be able to see through their lies and unite and fight together.
That was Aran Mylvaganam. Really appreciate you coming on today, brother.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, my friends. Share the podcast. Get along tomorrow. Share the podcast, tell your friends, and remember, there's never been a better time for a free Palestine.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast. If you found it valuable, please consider donating or subscribing to support independent community radio. To find out more, go to 3cr.org.au.